is ask questions, get the information, and that way we can all be operating from the same book of information when we discuss it, when we're having these discussions such as this.
You know, you mentioned a lot of great information, and while you were talking, Police Chief Forte sent me a message. He was invited to attend tonight's event. He was going to do everything he possibly could do to come to the meeting. However, he sent a message that I think really dives right into what you're saying. So I'm going to read it verbatim from what he said here on this message. And he says, please share with the group there will be a business board meeting at the police headquarters on August 30th at 9 o'clock a.m. And he is asking here, he says, to ask everyone who is available if they could please attend. The Board of Police Commissioners will be discussing a recommendation from me, that's him, Police Chief Forte, to change the captain's promotion process. Currently, there are only 2 black captains out of over 50 captains on the force. And he's also saying that there's a group that has been opposing his desire to do this. But I think to your point that you're saying, we have to be involved. And so before we leave, I want to make sure you all make a note of that on August 30th, let's make sure that we are able, if we invite 2 or 3 people, just the folks in this room, if we commit to come in or go to that meeting, that we can do that as well. That is at 9 a.m. according to the message from the chief. At the police headquarters downtown, across the street from City Hall.
1125 Locust.
Yeah, please.
I just want to make one quick observation based on what Chief Forte just mentioned, and perhaps add a little urgency, a little bit of my perspective to it as well. Oftentimes we say that the police that police our communities often don't understand or know the communities in which they're policing. If we're wanting diversity in the police department, that's something to push for in terms of what he's doing. But another thing to do is to encourage young people to become involved in law enforcement and to explore that as a career. In a lot of ways that we as community members can learn what police do is do a ride-along. There's also a police citizens academy as well. And so those are other ways to sort of understand what police go through on a day-to-day basis, as well as understand that role and to encourage young people to become law enforcement officers as well.
You know, I think you really dive right into sort of my final question for the panel before we break into the groups, that I want to allow all of you to provide your input, and then after that, been able to share that to the entire group. But that is, you know, what is it that we can do to build that momentum? You know, what is it that perhaps the faith community can do? What is it that the young people in our community can do? Community leaders and local organizations. Pastor Rainwhite, you've been a little silent, but know you certainly might have something to add before we split into groups. If you'd like to maybe add on to what Mr. Daniel has mentioned before we split into groups.
Counselor, I think the things that Damon mentioned were vital for our community to know. And when you talk about being educated, engaged, and involved, that is the perspective for each of us to have, and not only our churches, but our families, the community as a whole. And when we talk about what the faith community can do, it's actually partnering with local organizations within the city, the neighborhood organizations, continue to educate our congregants and families that we serve to be able to provide resources and education outside of our church walls.
Any final sort of comments before we split off into groups from the panel? Yeah. Okay, Merle?
Just, you know, there was something, and I've seen this happen before, but at my church this weekend, we had a back-to-school drive, and we gave away backpacks and things of that nature. And we had a police officer come to interact with the kids and things of that nature. And it was interesting, and it was an African-American female, Lenise Brown. And she came up, and she was there. She got out the car, and she was speaking to everybody. And one of the first things that the mother said, "You better act right because she's gonna lock you up." And her response is, please don't tell that baby that. Because already we are creating that fear of that uniform. And we have to be careful about that, because that child couldn't have been no more than 3 years old. He had on a pair of aviator shades, had his backpack, he was all happy. And as soon as she said that, he recorded and stopped smiling and stood behind his older brother. We have to be careful about how we present the situation to the youth, because we don't want to sit there and keep that cycle going.
Right.
Okay? And so luckily that situation resolved itself in the appropriate manner, but we have to, when we talk about engage, we have to engage on a personal level. I'm not sitting in this seat telling you that the police department does everything right all the time, but neither do we.
Right.
And so we have to be respectful, we have to be personable, and we have to be, and especially in this day and time, we have to be patient. But there's a lot going on right now. But we also have to be cautious about how we proceed and how we regard one another. So again, that we don't like it, as in the black community, we don't like being stereotyped. And I'm here to tell you that neither does anybody else. So we got to be careful about that.
You know, what you just said reminds me, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I am. But every time a police officer gets behind me, I'm a city councilman, but that means nothing. I'm just a black man driving, especially when I'm wearing a ball cap on my hat in my car. You know, I'm scared. Not necessarily just scared because there's an officer behind me, but it's just that sort of perception that comes so naturally every time. So how do we change that perception? Is what I want to do. Ms. May, I'll let you be the last person to have a comment, unless our panel has anything to say. We'll thank them, and we'll allow Councilman Lucas, who's joined us, to come up before we split into groups. And so, Margaret May.
I want to say thank you for having this conversation tonight. And just very briefly, when Emmanuel Cleaver was mayor, he really did the best he could to get the community to have a conversation on race.
Yeah.
And there were some efforts made, there were some conversations, a few things that happened during that era. But the conversation didn't actually lead to an action plan. So I'm happy to hear that the conversation we're having tonight, we do need to be honest with ourselves about what has occurred over time. And personally, I feel that unfortunately racism is alive and well, but also unfortunately there are things that we, the group of people, the black people in America, who suffer with the greatest health disparities, jobs, all those things, there are things that we can and should be and must do. So I would like to propose that this conversation tonight lead to the 3rd district and perhaps the 5th district participating together in promoting a conversation on race in our city that includes the people that make up the city, and not one just to talk and talk and talk, because the talk does need to lead to action, and that we commit ourselves that we're actually going to have an action plan to move forward to make this be different. Finally, the way that we get children to want to be police officers, as they did back in the time that I grew up in the city, is by having the children have exposure to the police officers and get a chance to look at that person as a friend. We need, when we have events and we have the police there, we need our children to have an opportunity to talk with and see and maybe even play with the officers. Our officers in the Ivanhoe neighborhood sometimes play basketball with the kids, or that's how we get to the point where our children start having a different view of things.
Any closing comments from our panel? If not, let's thank our panel for participating in the and I will, Reba Simmons is going to pass out here in shortly a sheet. And what I want to be able to do is there are 6 questions, and perhaps if we can maybe get into maybe 6 groups and let's maybe kind of, turn your seats around. We usually try to put a stamp or something on your agenda, but tonight we didn't do that, our star. So if we could kind of self-form into maybe 6 groups throughout this community space here in a second. There are 6 questions, and I think Ms. May really hit the nail on the head, where we're asking for this not just to be words that we're talking, but what are those action plans and steps? We can't just be talking heads up here. Councilman Lucas and I, our peers on the city council, and the mayor, the police chief, we just can't be talking heads. But how do we invite the community to be part of that larger discussion that allows for us to address the real topics at hand? So this is just a framework that you will receive. I ask that one person take these notes. We want to make sure we turn those in at the end. There's 6 sort of just bullet points on here to talk about what can the faith community do, the law enforcement, community leaders, local organization, nonprofits, black community, white community, youth and young adults. Again, this is just a framework. If there's additional things that you'd like to discuss, when we come back here in about 15 minutes to report out, please ask you all to do that. And also, I invite the officers who are here. I know you guys are just kind of here to chaperone us a little bit, but please feel free to split into a group. Please feel free to rotate between groups if you like and provide additional comments. Councilman Lucas, which I will point out, has been standing in the back and told me to kind of continue, but if you have some additional...
I like listening, so
Okay.
I look forward to hearing the groups.
So you'll hear more from Councilman Lucas very shortly, but he has been here in the back for quite some time, and so I don't want to think he just popped in pretty late. So let's, if we could form into groups, Reva will pass out those, and members of our panel will also join the groups as well. We have about 15 minutes.